You open the list again today. You've opened it about 30 times and you keep looking through all the check boxes, all the things that you want to do, all the things that you have to do in order to get your dream residency position, and it's beginning to drain you out. If this is you, this episode is for you. The first thing I want to tell you is that this is not a personal problem. This is not a failure of yourself. It's not a dysfunction in anything that you're doing. It's not a motivational problem. You actually don't need any more motivation. It's a problem where your nervous system feels extremely overwhelmed because this is a high stakes process that you, as a highly capable, highly ambitious individual, has in front of you that could literally define the trajectory of your career for the rest of your life. So it is pretty dang important, and that's probably not new for you, right? Because you already know that. But the overwhelm that comes into this process becomes the crippling factor that actually holds you back from taking the actions that you need in order to complete that to-do list for your residency application. So this episode is exactly what you need. Today, we're going to talk about how to organize your entire application when you don't know where to start. This is the IMG overwhelm episode. This is where we remove overwhelmed from all the different emotions that we're experiencing when we think about the residency match. I have my notes down here, so I'm going to be making reference to them as well. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to go over 5 different things today. We're going to talk about what creates that overwhelm that we're addressing here and how normal productivity doesn't always fix that, because sometimes overwhelm causes us to just cripple inside without necessarily any particular reason, right? This kind of overwhelm feels different usually because a lot of us spend time blaming ourselves for things that we should have done yesterday instead of just taking action on the things that we could do today, right? You're actually managing a lot of things. You're managing your step 1 preparation, your Q banks, your medical school preparation, maybe even your visa application, if that is also something in your arsenal that you need. You're dealing with letter of recommendations. You have letters that you need to get written by people that you have no control over. You have a personal statement that needs to be written. And if you get coached by me, for example, I would tell you your personal statement should speak to the program specifically, right? And so you have all these pressures that are on your mind. And then there's the aspect of the application itself and the fact that you have to organize it, that you have to pick out the ERAS application, your experiences, the descriptions, the publications you're going to put into it, the personal statement. You still have to do your program research. You have to figure out what programs to apply to, what states to prioritize, where you're going to signal, how are you going to create a signaling strategy. You're also thinking about, I got to network, and then I don't have a network, which I have a separate YouTube video on that, which you should watch if you haven't yet. You're thinking about building relationships, being genuine, right? All these things. Some of you are even working. You're working a side job while preparing for residency, while studying for USMLE. And you still have the usual pressures of being someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's wife, someone's husband. And Lord, it's a lot. There are so many things that you have to do, that you have to check off boxes for, and that can get overwhelming. And I understand that. But my fix today is not for you to work harder. It's just for you to work smarter. So we're going to shift from just checking off boxes, doing the thing that the other person said we should do, and focusing on adding more to our plate when we can reduce and funnel down, okay? So I want you to first look at your residency application not as a list, because it's something you cannot complete in one day. Your residency application should be planned out in phases. And that's why I strongly recommend using an annual approach. So your residency application doesn't start in September when you apply. It starts a year, 2 years before you apply, because you can actually give yourself the patience, the calmness to walk through these different parts of your application way early on, so that in the year that you are applying, you're finishing the list and not starting the list. So the first recommendation I have for you is to build a foundation with a timeline. The foundation with a timeline is best for those who have the advantage of time. So you're not going to apply this September, you're applying next September or a future September. yes, this is for you, because you can start now with the foundational plan and phase things out one by one. That way, in the last minute, you're not trying to complete all the USMLEs in the same year that you're trying to apply, that you're also trying to get your LORs, you're also trying to get your USCE, you're also trying to get your personal statement, because all those things are complete recipes for feeling overwhelmed. How do you eat an elephant? You can only, first of all, why are you eating an elephant? But you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. And that means you can only take things down in phases. And if you give yourself time to do that, then you can work through each phase, complete that phase, and move on. This is strongly why I have always taught the residency preparation process to not be something that starts in the summer of the year you apply. It starts a year, 2 years, 3 years before you send your application so that you can phase it out. So phase one typically looks like exam preparation. Phase one is the dedicated time study, which honestly, quite frankly, when you're in phase one, sometimes you don't have enough time to do other things. You don't have the luxury of maybe pursuing rotations, electives, observerships all at the same time. If you can, yes, please do. But sometimes that's just not the best use of your time when you're studying for a high stakes exam like Step 2 CK, right? What you could do is, if you plan ahead of time, you can allow for your dedicated study period to go uninterrupted such that your USCE, you're fully focused, you're fully centered, and you're really working on making that impression so that it becomes an acting internship for you, becomes an LOR opportunity for you. But if you delay those things, or if you try to cramp it all in one time, that gets super, super overwhelming. So phase one is usually not glamorous. It's just setting this foundation for your examination, setting the foundation for your studying, setting the foundation for getting the difficult things out of the way. Can you start your cool networking strategy during that process? Yes, you can, because you can do it from a computer and you don't have to leave your desk. However, the implementation, going on that rotation, traveling abroad, going to another state, going to another city, willingness to shadow, to observe, that will come in later on once you are available and have the luxury of time in phase two to pursue those things. So phase two is clinical experience. And if you're watching this and you're like, but she's just talking about medical school. Exactly. That's why medical school is structured the way that it is. And the structure of medical school actually should be kept that way. At least US medical school is what we're talking about. If you follow the structure of the US medical education, that's exactly what this is about, right? So you structure it such that your first few years are examination, or your first year's examination, or phase one is examination, which is quiet, lonely, sad, boring. Okay, let's be frank. Phase two is the clinical experiences. And this is where you're going on your rotations, your observership, you're doing some research work, hopefully with your scores in hand. And this is applicable for those that are graduates. So you've already finished your medical school education. Now, I want to say there's sometimes where you may overlap some aspects of phase one with phase two. So you may be doing your clinicals while also studying for Step 2 CK, and that is very common even for medical students. And I think that's fine if you have the bandwidth and if you can make it work and you have the test taking skill to not sabotage your test scores, then I think it's perfectly fine, because actually you're learning on your clinical experiences. You could be doing your QBank simultaneously with your clinical experiences so that you're learning as you go. And I did this a lot in medical school, where if I was doing internal medicine this month or these 3 months, I went through the internal medicine section of USMLE Ward during that time so that I could have continuous longitudinal learning, okay? So I could be learning as I go and not waiting till the last minute to do my internal medicine section of the QBank. So phase two, you're working on your clinical experiences, and early on in that, you're just probably getting experiences that are in your dream specialty, but you want to focus on guarding or collecting a few experiences that are potentially at residency programs at your maybe reach programs. So programs that you want to go to, you're not sure yet if you have what it takes to get there, but you want to get clinical experience with them. And some of this can be achieved through actually contacting the programs themselves and asking for these opportunities by phone or cold emailing or networking. But this is all things that you would be doing on your own to obtain, right? So with phase two, you're working on your experiences. And the best way to filter through your experiences is you want to make sure that the experiences that you pick are in alignment with your specialty of interest. So there's some overlap of commitment to your specialty. The experiences that you pick do show commitment to your specialty. That's one. The experiences that you pick do show interest in your specialty. So whether it's a research experience, whether it's a clinical experience, whether it's a non-clinical experience, but if it could show commitment or interest in your specialty, you know that you're doing the right thing. The second tier with filtering out what kind of experiences that you want to focus on would be rotations, obviously, that have an academic presence. So they're in a community hospital, that's a teaching hospital, or they're at a residency program, which is tier one, highest recommendation type of experience with a residency program. If you can get that, I would always prioritize that at any point in phase two. So it's whatever time I can get to go there, I'm going there. But if you have an opportunity that can serve as an acting rotation, you want to collect the less high stakes opportunities first. So the ones that require maybe just shadowing somebody that you know, somebody in your family, or you're getting clinical experience at a private practice. You could do those early on to get your feet wet, okay? Because you're just trying to get experience in the US system. But then you save those high stakes academic shadowing opportunities that could lead to an interview for later in the cycle. So you're saving those for the summer of the year in which you apply. And that's why it's important to start early. Because if you start early, you could be slated for the summer, but you can't in the summer expect to have a rotation that same summer with the high stakes program, because people usually apply maybe a year prior, 2 years prior to get their slots saved. So the earlier you could start, and this may be something that you actually include in phase one, the earlier you can start, the better it is for you to secure those kind of opportunities down the road. Okay. So phase three is actually the application construction. And this is where I do a lot of my coaching, is around putting phase one and phase two together and helping you create a story, helping you create an outline, a guide to show people your work, okay, in your application. So this is how you now take phase one and phase two and represent them in your ERAS application or residency CAS if you're applying to OBGYN or emergency medicine. So you'll be looking at drafting your personal statements, your experience, descriptions. The descriptions in your experiences are so important. And I think sometimes we wait till we're filling out the dynamic ERAS form online before we start thinking about the description. They give you a 700 character box there and ask you to put in context, rules, and responsibilities for a reason. They want to know the context that you work in. They want to know the roles you had, the responsibilities you carried out, and how you did them. And then they even ask you how meaningful it was for you. So some of the examples that I like to show is examples that, one, define clearly the role that you were in, the context that you were in. So the context could be a clinic, a hospital, a nursing home, a mental health facility, an outpatient center, right? So you want to capture that in that description box. And then you also want to capture the roles and responsibilities as well. And a lot of that, if you had not previously been in that environment or you haven't previously read an ERAS application, you may not know what all should go in there. Some of us fill that space with learning about the EMR. You can read, so they're not worried about you learning an EMR fast. Most of us are millennials that are applying into residency. And even if you're older, this is just a generation that is really good at learning tech. So they're not worried about that. But capturing responsibilities and roles that speak to your clinical interest, your clinical acumen, the work that you did, quantifying and qualifying that work using metrics, using numbers, standardizing your language so that the reader can understand, that is what's important, right? Your publications list, so like your scholarly activity. Finding scholarly activity that you have done, even in your remote past, is important here because it doesn't always have to be about what you've done in the last year when it comes to publication or scholarly activity. You could have written publications or written papers that got published in your home country for many years. That's the work that you bring to the forefront because that speaks about your commitment from time before, not just right now, right? And then there are the publications that we do in the US so that we have US publications. But remember, a publication that is peer-reviewed, even if it's not US published, is still a peer-reviewed publication that carries high scientific significance. And more importantly, it shows that you know exactly what it takes to write this research paper or write this abstract or to create a systematic review and meta-analysis. And that's what they want. They just want someone who can demonstrate interest in doing these things, even if they're not the expert at it. Okay? So phase three has a hard deadline. It's certain. It's what it is. you would have a deadline to submit to ERAS. You have a deadline to put out your application to ERAS and to submit and certify. And you have a deadline to start your application. So when the application's open, they give you leeway. But then ERAS closes, though it closes later in the cycle, but you don't want to wait around till a month after ERAS open to apply, because it's like a race, it's like a marathon. Once the doors open or when they say go, students, residents, or medical students, IMGs are all applying. You can't be dilly-dallying waiting for an arbitrary LOR to get uploaded before you submit your application. You can't be waiting for something and that last minute when people are already getting reviewed. You want to be in the race early on to win it. And I think that you want to be ready to submit on the day that ERAS opens. If it's all within your purview, that is your goal. You submit the day that ERAS opens. You don't wait around for weeks and weeks and applications are getting downloaded and you still haven't submitted. You're going to submit next week or the week after. I think that is a huge disservice to you, because at that point, programs may not get your application just by virtue of how late you submitted. Now, that's a generalization. I don't want to cause fear. There are some programs that have different structures in how they download. They download periodically, weekly, monthly, in phases, however ways that they do it. So don't just take that and run with it. Okay, each program is different and you should try to learn about your unique programs that you're applying into. So ERAS opens and closes on a fixed schedule. So I want you to build before the platform opens. I want your personal statement to have been done before the platform opens. You should have completed your personal statement by August of the year in which you apply. You should not be going through it in August and September. July, you're getting feedback from your mentors, your coaches, your friends on your personal statement. You're not waiting until the very last minute to try to get your application reviewed, okay? Because then it's too late. They're inundated, first of all, with requests from so many different sources. And then for you, you're under pressure and you're already feeling overwhelmed. And what we're trying to do here is reduce your overwhelm, okay? So I think for phase 3, you want to focus, and this is your intensive period. So phase 3 could look like June, July, August of the year in which you apply. So it's where you're really focusing on the application and what goes into it. And this is exactly where module 7 of the IMG roadmap course comes into play, because that's where I give you line by line, bullet item instruction on how to fill out this form, so that you are collecting all your experiences, collecting all your expertise, and expressing that in your application overtly, okay? So that there's no questions asked about whether you're qualified, about whether you have what it takes. It's right there and it speaks for itself, and it tells a story about who you are and how you think. The way you describe your research, the way you describe your clinical work, the way you describe your non-medical experiences, all those things matter, okay? Phase 4, and it's not necessarily a phase by itself, but it's embedded in the phase 3 in the sense that it's part of what you're doing in June, July, and August of the year in which you apply, which is you are hopefully already figuring out where to apply, what programs are on your strategic list, and you're building relationships with those programs before you submit your application. So this is where your networking comes into play, whether you're meeting these programs at the national conference for your medical specialty, or you're meeting them at the state conference for your specialty, or you are cold emailing them, or you're calling the program coordinators asking for opportunities to rotate, to shadow, to be present with an attending physician, to work with the team, to round, to be in grand rounds. These are all conversation starters. They're all the areas where people get to know that you exist and they get to know who you are. One of the aspects in the program director survey is prior knowledge of an applicant, or if an applicant has auditioned or did an audition rotation in their specialty, in your department, right, for the applicant. And I think when I look at that point, it just makes me realize that there's a great number of people who are getting into programs based on prior knowledge of who they are by the program, and also based on the fact that they auditioned or had some kind of clinical experience with a residency program. So we don't know what those numbers are, how many people do convert, right? But we know that there's a large likelihood that if you rotate at a certain facility, there's a likelihood that you get interviewed there, and there's a likelihood that you get ranked if you are liked, right? So phase 4, which is really the program strategy, the program research, and the outreach, is something that, again, can overlap with 3 and 2. but at the same time can be done by itself. Okay, it just depends on how pressed you are for time. But again, this is an IMG overwhelm episode. We're trying to eliminate overwhelm. So the whole point of this is giving yourself enough time to research programs, to have a strategy with your application so that it's not just in the last minute you're rushing to get things done. And I want to take this moment to invite you into my IMG Roadmap membership, which we start July 1st, 2026, and it's going to run till the end of the year. And we'll be working through every important part of the application every other Wednesday. We'll meet at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's where I will work with you to develop your strategy, to make sure that you are doing the right things towards your application process, and directing you to a resource that I've created, which has just so much information and material that you can pick and choose what's important for you right now. If it's getting a personal statement, there's teachings and trainings for that. If it's LORs, there's teachings and trainings for that. But do come join us in there. And then phase 5, which is the last part of things, maybe almost last before the rank, is the interview season, right? So phase 5 is where you're preparing, you're scheduling, you're sending your emails, and you're doing things in Thalamus and figuring out where you're going to travel to and how you're going to travel. And phase 5 to me is the easiest and happiest phase because you're finally seeing that your dream is possible. You're getting invited for interviews. You have a workable problem. You have a fixable problem. Because if it's a problem of soft skills, if it's a problem of interviewing, if it's a problem of talking to people and not knowing what to say, how to structure it, I think that's all fixable. I think there's a way around. There's always a walk around it. So I wouldn't stress so much about that part. I would just focus on the controllables, which is how many programs can I apply into? What can I do right now to secure interviews? Because once you secure an interview, converting a program is so much easier. So hopefully this program gives you an outline of how you can phase out your preparation so that you are not just being overwhelmed by the process of applying to residency. So I have 3 questions for you. I want you to sit down and answer these 3 questions, okay? Question 1 is, what phase am I in right now? Am I in phase 1? Am I in phase 2? Am I in phase 3? Or am I in overlap, right? What phase are you in right now? Okay. And then the next question that you're going to answer after you determine what phase you're in is, what are 2 things that genuinely I need to do right now to move the needle within this phase that I'm in? So for you, it may be, if I'm in phase 1, I just need to do an NBME so I know where I'm at instead of just sitting on my U or Q bank and staring at it for days on end. For the next person who is in phase 2, they may be looking at sending out 5 emails a day or registering for the next conference that they have the capacity to attend, okay? For the next person, it may be some other target that moves the needle for them, okay? The next question that you're going to answer, question 2, is, what is the one thing that I've been avoiding that I need to stop avoiding? And I know this is true for most of us because I avoid things all the time. I avoided recording this video, okay? So there we go. There's always something on the list that keeps getting pushed down and further down the list. The email that you need to send, the personal statement that you need to write, the LOR that you need to ask for. You keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And you think that you will do it in the future. Why don't we just set a date and a time for it? Go on your phone right now and plug it in. I'm going to reach out to Dr. XYZ on this date to ask about my MSPE. Just plug it in right now. That way you just do it on that time, okay? The next question, the fourth question I have for you is, what am I waiting on that I cannot control, right? And can I let go of worrying about it this week? You're not going to let go worrying about it forever. But what can I do right now, today, okay? Part of the process of the overwhelm is there's a lot of waiting. There's waiting for scores. There's waiting for LORs to get written. There's waiting for an MSP to get written. We're always waiting for something. We're always waiting for a letter to be submitted, a program that we've already reached out to respond. And that causes a lot of anxiety because there's so much uncertainty and so much unknown, right? And it takes up our mental energy. There's so much mental expenditure of energy that gets taken away with worry. And worry is not a strategy. Worry is not a productivity hack. Worry does not do anything for us. It just makes us suffer for longer periods of time. So when you can think of it that way, it's like, what is the antidote to worry? It's action. It's doing one thing that would just move the needle for you. Just doing something for what you cannot control. That is what it is. So once you've figured out the answers to these questions, then you can sit back and begin to work on your tracking system. Okay. So a tracking system should do a few things for you. A tracking system should be you having deadlines to know when your exams are going to be completed, when you'll have the results for them. You're going to have a tracking system that looks at your clinical experiences, where you are with your letter of recommendations, where you are with your program list and outreach. And some of this can be so difficult, but I have a tool that one of my alumni just created. It's called Match Ready. And she built it especially for IMG. She's an alumni of the IMG roadmap. It handles step tracking, it handles USCE logging, LOR management, and program research all in one place. So this is a great tool to reduce overwhelm. You can find it by just searching Match Ready, or you can click the link down below in the show notes, or we'll also have it in our show notes and in the description of the YouTube video for you to check out. It'll be a great tool. It's well organized, and it'll be a great tool for you to utilize. It's still in the beta phase, so you'll be able to access it when you join the IMG Roadmap membership, and you'll be able to access it there to be able to track what you're doing and where your targets and where your goals are. Okay. It's a great app. Absolutely love it. Highly recommend for IMGs by IMGs. And it's free for everyone inside the IMG Roadmap right now. So last but not least, let's talk about what you'll do when the days are hard, okay? Because this is the hard part. This is the part that nobody talks about, because there's going to be rough days. There's going to be days where you want to break down. There's going to be days where you'll cry. Many days I cried. Many days you don't know what's going to hold for the future. My fear was if I didn't match, I was going to go back to Cameroon and start over. And I didn't know what that could look like. I loved it in America and I didn't want it to live here. Let's just be frank. So there are going to be days when you do everything right and it doesn't feel like anything is working. And there are going to be days where you plan the week and you get on Match Ready and you have this outline. You're feeling less overwhelmed because you have a dashboard now. Those days are going to happen. They're not a sign that you're failing. They're not a sign that you are weak. I think it's just part of who we are as human beings, is that we're going to experience some days where everything just feels overwhelming. The first thing I do in those moments is I let myself cry. Let yourself do whatever you do to lament, okay? Experience the pain. But don't add the weight of everything by beating yourself up about it, okay? If you experience the pain, you let it out. I find that a good cry session lets it out, and then I can go back to the drawing board and figure out what I'm trying to do, okay? Second, remember that you're not alone. You don't have to do this alone, which is why I really strongly recommend community for us as IMGs, because within community, we can help each other figure these things out. We can help support each other such that you're not doing this by yourself, okay? And that's what I'm introducing with the IMG Remote Membership. It's a community, a cohort of like-minded individuals, IMGs, physicians, students, working towards that next residency application together with me, getting the support both mentally and emotionally, right? Because when you have people to rely on, you can easily break through the paralysis cycle. You can easily break through just the rumination phase of doing things, where you're just thinking about it, doing it over and over again. And do reach out to someone. Even if you're not a member of my programs, you can always reach out to me. You can vent in my Instagram messages. That's totally fine. I get those kind of messages all the time. But it's also good for you when you let that out, because you're talking to someone that you trust. You can send a message to myself or your mentor, your friend. You can post in our cohort group, in the IMG Roadmap group. This process is hard and it is so rewarding, but it's hard. And I feel like at the point that I accepted that it was supposed to be hard, then it got easier, because then I just relinquished every desire for ease and allowed myself to experience the hardness. And so I want you to know that you are not alone in this, and that we're all here with you, and I'm here to support you. If you've been watching this and you've been thinking, I need someone to actually walk me through this and I don't want to do it alone anymore, I want to invite you, because this is what the IMG Roadmap is about. I will be walking you through primarily phase 3 and 4 over the next few months inside the IMG Roadmap. but I give you resources to help you with phase 2. Okay. We don't offer USMLE tutoring or USMLE preparation inside the roadmap, but the link is in the description if you want to learn more about the cohort coaching program. And I'll see you in the next podcast video if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening to me on Apple, Spotify. Make sure you hit subscribe and rate this episode. Thank you for watching.